You would think that this Spotify saga with Rogan would end, and yet somehow, Krystal, it makes it all the way to the White House press briefing room, where Jen Psaki says that, well, what happened to Rogan, the labeling is fine, but we want to see more from the company. Here's what she had to say.
Last week, the Surgeon General also was asked on MSNBC about Joe Rogan's vaccine comments on Spotify, and he said that tech companies have an important role to play in stopping misinformation because they are the predominant places where misinformation spreads. Spotify is putting out advisory warnings on episodes that have to do with COVID-19. Does the White House and the administration think this is a satisfactory step, or do you think that companies like Spotify should go further than just putting a label on there to say, hey, go do your own, check this out. There's more research you can look at, scientific research regarding COVID.
Sure. Well, last July, you probably know, but the Surgeon General also took the unprecedented step to issue an advisory on the risk of misinformation in public health, which is a very significant step. And amid that, he talked about the role social media platforms have. So our hope is that all major tech platforms and all major news sources, for that matter, be responsible and be vigilant to ensure the American people have access to accurate information on something as significant as COVID-19. That certainly includes Spotify. So this disclaimer, it's a positive step, but we want every platform to continue doing more to call out mis and disinformation while also uplifting accurate information. I mean, look at the facts, right? You are 16 times more likely to be hospitalized if you're unvaccinated and 68 times more likely to die than someone who is boosted if you're unvaccinated. That's pretty significant, and we think that is something that unquestionably should be the basis of how people are communicating about it. But ultimately, our view is it's a good step, it's a positive step, but there's more that can be done.
More that can be done. Who are these people to tell Spotify who and what should be on their platform?
Well,
this is like during the entire Facebook saga.
I mean, first of all, imagine having that privileged position of being able to ask a question of the White House press secretary when you have the climate crisis. You've got, people's lives are up and inflation. I mean, all of these major issues. And you want to know about the labeling on Spotify.
I mean, I know why
Joe
they did it,
Rogan's podcast because he knows it's going to get clipped and he knows his face is going to be on television. It's disgusting. And oh, by the way, this I knew immediately when they started going this direction of like, let me tell you about the misinformation out there on Facebook and on Spotify, on all these platforms. When they did this a while back, this is a great way to scapegoat, to distract from their own failings with regard to the pandemic. Why don't you ask, if you're worried about pandemic deaths, why don't you ask why we aren't pushing for a healthcare system that doesn't incentivize chronic illness and death and keep people detached from the medical system so that they're fearful of going to the doctor when they get sick? Why don't you ask about that? Or why don't you ask about how they lied about caring that the big pharma companies lifted their patent protections. They said, oh yeah, we support that. And then they did nothing about it and continued to block that proposal at the World Trade Organization. If you're worried about people being unvaccinated, let me tell you, you got way bigger fish to fry than freaking Joe Rogan. It's just so outrageous. And the number of people who are begging for politicians to take a more active hand in censorship and picking who can be heard and who can't be heard is deeply, deeply disturbing.
Yeah, it's nuts. But okay, let's talk about misinformation. You say there's an imminent attack by Russia on Ukraine. The Ukrainians say that's not true. So is that misinformation? That's actually real misinformation about what you are saying. You say something about, for example, on the Biden administration, with all of their claims around Russia, which is being driven by Putin for X, Y, and Z, is any of that even true? I mean, what about that misinformation?
You want to talk about dangerous activities?
Yeah.
What are you doing in Afghanistan right now denying
millions of people are about to starve to death.
1 million people have already fled the country. Millions of children are about to starve to death. And you're asking about whether the labeling is enough on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's such a joke. I mean, that's the thing, is it's just such a joke. It's such a show. You're right, the incentives are so perverse. All that dude cares about is like,
well, he's a foreign media reporter. I know that guy.
Getting his little clip on the nightly news or whatever. So people like us will talk about it, which here we are doing. I guess it serves his interests, but at least we're showing you what the real incentives are involved here. No, it's disgraceful. It's such a show and just pure theater and a distraction from anything that would actually make people's lives better. better. So yeah, it's very convenient for them to scapegoat, Joe, who, listen, I talked about those podcasts and the issues I had with them, but the idea that that's the problem in the country is completely insane. You people couldn't even get tests out. I mean, here we are, the Omicron wave is subsiding and we still haven't gotten our damn tests. So it's utterly ridiculous.
And I'm watching this. This is all part of a cathedral plan in order to try and destroy him. Like, I'm watching this very closely. We've got the White House involved. Now the New York Times op-ed page. Now I see other artists out there trying to recruit Taylor Swift and some of the biggest streamers on the platform. I'm watching this happen in real time as they ramp it all up. Another thing I'd never considered, Krystal, I think it's mighty convenient that this all happened right before earnings season. So Daniel Ek was actually forced in order to answer on his earnings call when the stock has now dropped by 20% over at Spotify.
And he's the CEO.
He's the CEO of Spotify. Now, this is something which actually has been happening to Dave Portnoy, which is that Business Insider continues to drop these ridiculous, we don't have to litigate it right now, but they continue to drop these sexual assault allegations against him right before his company has to go and have earnings calls, which puts a huge screw on him and his stockholders and shareholders. I think that's the exact same thing about what's happening. We are watching all of this happen right before Spotify earnings in order to try and destroy the stock, destroy the company, and force them ultimately to fire Rogan. So none of this is organic. I'm fully convinced this is like a massive hit job, which is all just happening, kind of organically, because the incentives for these people is to continue to spew it up. But it's a big con job that's being pulled off on people, and it's covering up for a lot of crimes by the people actually in the establishment.
Yeah, it's a total distraction. It's disgraceful.
Yeah. All right.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We're going to have more for you later.